I'm a Raven. It's on all year.
So Ravens flock, we're a few weeks away from training camp starting, and one of the more underrated battles is going to be the battle for that last remaining starting linebacker position, the weak side linebacker opposite of Roquan Smith. It's assumed that it's going to be Trenton Simpson's spot as far as who's going to be the starter of the future, but that's still not an answer that most Ravens fans are all that comfortable with, considering what Trenton has been so far in his career. And it seems like maybe the Ravens aren't that comfortable with it either, because it's interesting that over the past couple of weeks, the Ravens have been trying to push Teddye Buchanan into Ravens flock faces a lot the past couple of weeks. So I'm sure many of you have seen Teddye Buchanan be featured on the Ravens podcast, The Lounge, as well as the Ravens uploading videos talking about how he's a player to watch in training camp. And with that being said, I think that's them clearly hinting to us that he is going to have a start at being that he is going to have a shot at being that starting linebacker. They do the same thing with Andrew Voorhees every year, where they make him a guy that they push to the forefront and make sure he gets as much visibility as possible in the offseason. And I'm interested to see if Teddie can work for that starting position, or maybe it could be an opportunity for Trenton to take that extra motivation and rise to the occasion. We'll see how it works out. This is going to be Trenton's third season. He's coming out of Clemson. We all remember he's a guy who we had high expectations for. He was meant to be the Patrick Queen replacement, and he was a guy that was perceived to have pretty much all the physical traits you could want, and also be a guy who was like a jack of all trades, who was very dangerous coming off the edge. However, for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's Trenton's fault or if it's the coach's fault, I don't know who, if anybody is to blame. Maybe it's a combination, but either way, up until this point, things have really not been connecting it for Trenton, to the point where Trenton ended up pretty much getting benched last season and losing snaps to veteran linebackers who the Ravens coaching staff clearly thought were more suitable or more respectable players that they could put in there. Obviously, we all saw that Roquan in the early part of the season, he was not looking as effective, and I think part of that was Roquan himself and his fault. But then also part of that, like many people have pointed out, could just simply be the fact that he was so worried about having to try to overcompensate for Trenton, because Trenton was always messing up in one way or another, and that was distracting Roquan from being the best that he can be. So with that being the case, Trenton may be in the doghouse for all we know. It's yet to be seen, but that may be a possibility. We all know that. Well, actually, real quick, to go back to Trenton losing snaps to veterans, a similar thing happened to Tez Walker last year that may be uncomfortable, where Tez Walker, somehow, he got leapfrogged by, I believe it was Anthony Miller, a guy who I didn't even realize was on the roster, to be honest with you, until we started seeing him in games get like significant snaps, and you start wondering, like, wait, is Tez Walker not working out for them to kind of let this guy come in these moments? And that's kind of the impression that I got when it came to Trenton Simpson and him losing snaps to veterans. That, as a fan, that made me a bit uneasy. Like maybe he's a guy that the Ravens are trying to move on from. We'll see how it goes. But at the same time, if Teddie ends up winning a starting spot, I'm more than cool with it. I was actually like the draft pick coming out of Cal. It's very interesting that Harbaugh typically doesn't like prioritizing playing rookies unless they're like first round players or something. He usually doesn't like putting rookies out there. He would prefer to go with the veterans, just because I guess he figures that the veterans are less likely to make those rookie mistakes, and they'll typically be more fundamentally sound than somebody who still may need a little more development. However, if Teddie balls out, Teddie also seems like somebody with a good head on his shoulders who may be better at processing the game than Trenton. I mean, maybe Harbaugh gives him a shot. It could be interesting. Let me know, do you guys believe that Teddie Buchanan does have a shot to take that starting linebacker spot, or do you think that this can be the last bit of motivation that Trenton needed to put all the pieces together to become the best player that he can be.